Okay, round two. I actually made a video for this, and this is the second recording. Seemingly, this is a much more difficult trial to explain, and once I actually ended up finding my through line and my way through it with regards to how I would explain it better and present it better, I think that the journey in that video was a little bit up and down, so I'm doing a second recording now and see if this one here lands a little bit better. So, trial number 10. This is a trial of, I guess you could say, cosmic law, or even better, I would say the trial of purification. So what do we mean by that? As always, let's go into the events first, and then we're going to talk about the actual symbolisms. Strong winds trapped them on the island of Thrinakia for a full month. There is the sacred cattle and sheep of the god Helios, or Helios, which is the sun, by extension the light. So this is a divine, you might say, location, and by extension the sacred cattle and sheep are a divine extension of that. I would say that perhaps to a certain degree the symbolism of the sheep and the cattle could be to a form of pure innocence, or the pure divine, or the creations of that light, that pure innocence and that pure creation, you might say. Circe and Tiresias both strictly warned not to touch them. We'll start there. The men are starving and desperate for 30 days. Odysseus has warned them. He tells them constantly, do not touch the cattle. While he sleeps, in their desperation, at one point they slaughter and eat the cattle. Zeus sends a violent storm as they send off, and thunderbolt, and he destroys the ship. All the remaining men drown, and that's the end of them. Only Odysseus survives, clinging on to wreckage. So that is the events, how they pretty much played out in that trial. I think with this second round, I've been able to streamline it a lot more, because it is a much more difficult, let's just say, trial to really deep dive. And the bigger problem that I had with the last recording is that my mind was just constantly going into different directions and a lot of different symbolisms, and I was overloading some of the information with, kind of like touching on things that started going a little bit too much. So again, I broke my own rule, keep it simple, stupid, which can't be too simple for this specific trial, but let's try it regardless. And I think that I have a better through line here to be able to kind of present it in a much smaller and more precise manner. So, the crew represents the last desperate, fear-driven survival instincts still left in Odysseus. So I've got the notes down, I re-refined the notes. This is probably the third, fourth time that I've written the notes to make sure that I have a much better outline in order to go through this trial here. In mythology, and also I said this in the last videos as well, the men represent, they are the extension of the leader, of the captain, and whatnot, and they are parts in this story, as we have seen in the entire Odyssey. Pretty much, they are parts of Odysseus ultimately. That's one thing that we have to keep in mind here. So when we say the crew represents the last desperate, fear-driven survival instincts still left in Odysseus, it is parts of himself, okay, and he needs to cleanse those parts. The cattle and the sheep, I went over that. They're not ordinary food. They belong to divine cosmic order itself. It's like there's a rule, like it's a very simple symbolization there, like to kind of like bring it as a symbolism that it's just like some divine food and you're not supposed to touch it. There's a rule. So it's just I guess you could say to a certain degree made up, or whatever the case may be, to symbolize those ethics, those ethical lines that we should not cross in a lot of cases and situations. Killing them is a conscious decision to break the sacred law, because those fear-mongering and last parts are like, we're going to die anyway, so to hell with ethics, to hell with the cosmic order. And I would argue this is the point where man becomes animal. That is what separates us from the animals. An animal, and I'm not saying this in any bad manner or in any bad way, because, I love animals, but they do work on survival instincts much more, and if they are starving for 30 days, they will do anything to try to get some food and to survive. What this also shows us is that there's much more reserves within the human soul and the human body than we are aware of. And just when we think we've reached our limit, there's always some more. And besides that, also another part to all this is that there's always some divine grace that is given to us once we are truly out of our own rations with regards to how far we can actually go, and an olive branch is extended to pull us a little bit more in. And this is also going to be mostly reflected on so much in this trial, but in the 12th trial. So I'm going to come back to this a little bit. So it's a conscious choice at this point to cross an ethical line. The means are not justified by the ends. And this is something that we need to learn as well. Just because we, for whatever reason it may be, our baser instincts, in this case here, it's a pretty hard trial, because, we can all play it philosophical and spiritual and enlightened. But what would each one of us do in that situation, in that case where we are starving? Would you break the rule, the law, a cosmic law that should not be broken? That perhaps your life depends on, or your own soul, even better, your own soul depends on it. And I think that this is also holding the line with regards to our ideals as human beings, breaking before the fear of death and throwing away the qualities of our soul or ethics or beliefs or whatnot, just so we can be like, okay, I renounce and just let me live, please. There's a lot of different kind of situations that we can have here in the symbolism with regards to those baser instincts and those baser selves, which, by the way, they were wrong, because Odysseus, as the story shows us, he did not succumb to that desperation, and that's why he remained alive. That's why Zeus spared him. Their fear-mongering was incorrect to begin with. Like, because of their fear-mongering, it's as if they heightened their survival instincts and they made their hunger even worse. Once we give in to all those baser instincts, instead of having the calm that allows us to be controlled and power through and find for even more reserves, and I don't want to go into even bigger, symbolisms here, because I did that last recording and I ended up going all over the place. But let's just say that there is much more to us than just the flesh and blood. And we do have more reserves than we are aware, mostly acutely aware of, let's just say. But regardless, it is proven that because Odysseus kept living, it was proof that they didn't have to eat the cattle. They would have still been alive like Odysseus. This is also the symbolism of getting rid of those last parts of us, where we are doing a cleansing, and those last emotions, those last parts, those last little fidgety, things inside us, even the most lower, baser kind of parts that are, to a certain degree, things that have kept us alive and kept us going forward for a very long time. Once we transcend and go past a certain threshold, they're no longer useful to us, let's just say. Because let's not forget, it's this same man that tied Odysseus to the mast and drove through the storm. It was the same man that took him through this entire journey. But here's the through line in all of this. Odysseus started with so many men, and in each trial we see less and less and less and less men slowly, come out of each trial. So he's cleansing himself of all his emotions, of all his temptations, of all his egos. And now this is like the hardest trial, I would argue. This is the pure final trial of purification. And that's why Zeus is involved, because Zeus is the final judgment in this. The thunderbolt comes, crashes them down, and gets rid of every single last one of the few, remaining men. Odysseus is the only one that is remaining alive. So this is the final purification. This is the final cleansing on the final straight before home. Another juxtaposition that we could actually do with this, besides the extra reserves that we can have as humans, and we always have more than we believe, and also that there is a cosmic law that rewards us for that patience and that faith, and gives us even more, not just rewards, but patience and energy and strength to carry on. As long as we stay true to that energy, we are never pushed beyond what we can actually handle. Some iterations might see this as a form of a bit of a sacrifice, that you don't do something even if it's going to kill you. I don't know how much the ancient Greeks believed that. Even in the Iliad, they never done sacrifice. Like, even that's over 1,000 years BC. Okay, so that's a very long time ago. Even then, like, the sacrifice they would do would be goats and, boars and things of that nature. Never human sacrifice. And also in classical Greece as well, and even later with the philosophers, they would say, do not bow to the gods. Another thing about the ancient Hellenes is that we did not bow to the gods. And if you notice, all our prayers always, like other nations and other religions, or even of that time or even later, were always, going down and you bow. Whereas the ancient Greeks were always looking up. We did not bow to the gods, much less sacrifice ourselves. So I do not agree with that interpretation that some have, that you'd sacrifice even your life to, to not interfere with the divine. I think much more so it is a case of that you are sacrificing parts of yourself, and you need to let go of those parts. ultimately, like I said, a cleansing and a purification. Another thing about this is it's a 30-day involuntary fasting, and it parallels the purification practices similar to the 40 days in other traditions and later traditions such as Christ. And what was Christ going through that situation? If we do a small parallel juxtaposition here, he was constantly tempted by Satan. Perhaps we could say he's, in this story here, the lower parts of the self, to stop the fasting. And there's much more behind fasting and why it is a purification to the body, and it is a process that we go through, and there are certain things that the body goes through when it fasts. Actually, of recent, there's been some more discoveries with regards to like mini fasting kind of like diets that really help improve the body and the health of the body, and also the fact that the body has self-healing properties. There's so much there that we haven't tapped into. Unfortunately, the medical census of the modern world, let's be honest, I mean, there are a lot of things that are correct in it, a lot, but there's also, in many cases, the solutions or how they go about certain things is in the manner of an industry. And what does the industry thrive on? Medication. It wants you to be sick. Food for thought for those of you that might not have already been aware of something so obvious. I think I made a much more precise, concise kind of like encapsulation of this trial. It is the last purification, the last cleansing of those final last parts inside of us, which they're not particularly bad. It's just that they're of this world. And at this point he's going somewhere else. He's going much, much further, and those parts of him cannot follow. And it is that final purification before the last stretch home. I'll leave it at that, because if I go much deeper, it's going to be a 28-minute video like the previous one, which I ended up editing down to 20 minutes, and then I still was not happy with it, so I ended up making this video. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. 2 trials left. I'll see you on the next 2 trials. Till then, peace be with you.